All right, let's look at this Nigeria's debt stock issue. Nigeria's public debt has been on the rise. Of course, that's obvious and glaring for anyone to see. But despite securing debt relief during the Olusegun Obasanjo-led administration, successive governments have continued on a borrowing spree. The latest being the DMO's plan to borrow an additional 6.3 trillion naira to finance the 2022 budget. And of course, this has raised concerns amongst Nigerians on the debt sustainability of the country amid dwindling revenue to meet the debt obligations to creditors. What's your reaction on this latest borrowing of 6.3 trillion naira?
Thank you very much, Bolande. The issue of debt management has been of great concern to an average Nigerian at the level at which the current administration is actually going about borrowing. You made a reference to the administration of Olusegun Obasanjo at the time that they had to clear some of our debts with World Bank, and within the shortest possible time we found ourselves in this current predicament. And this is attributable to the failure on the part of our leaders in doing what is expected of them as at when due. You know that the borrowing that we're talking about is a fallout of the issue of subsidy that has been a kind of worm that is penetrating into the bone and marrow of every of our economy and spheres of activities in the country. Remember that there was a move of removing the subsidy, fully, but because of the current hardship being experienced by an average Nigerian and the low purchasing power, the federal government decided they want to close up the gap till the end of the year and possibly make provision till June when they will be handed over. And this has led to an issue of we saying we want to borrow. Well, it's obvious, it's a known fact. But I think we should look at...
But maybe I should just butt in there, Mr. Okwande. Aside the fact that we're paying subsidy, the federal government has always talked about borrowing. Aside the fact that they are about to pay subsidy, we know that borrowing has been the order of the day. So are you tying it to the subsidy?
Our revenue is not matching up to the expenses that we have. And if that has happened, there is a deficit. Remember, in the last few years, we've been running a deficit budget. And when you have a deficit budget, you are expected to augment it by borrowing. And that's the problem we are faced with, that our revenue, despite the increase in the cost of crude oil, which has been a major source of revenue, over 70%, as we have never benefited from it because the product itself we are not refining and we are not opening more door even for us to grow that business in that aspect. So because our revenue is not increasing, our expenses and cost of governance keep increasing, there is nothing else that we do than to borrow to augment this. And that has been the major challenge that we've had, aside the issue of subsidy that has entrenched into our economy, causing a kind of worm as we are. But there are certain solutions we've actually been providing.
Before we talk about the solutions, Mr. Okwande, let's look at some of these issues extensively, especially considering the fact that in 2021, within 2 weeks, the Senate approved 3 different loan requests by President Muhammadu Buhari. On July 7, 2021, the upper chamber approved the loan request of 2.34 trillion naira, approximately $6 billion, and then another $8.3 billion, and then they also approved 490 million euros. And you'd recall that the Senate had at one time said that whatever is brought to them by President Muhammadu Buhari's administration will be approved. Who do you think should be performing the role of the gatekeeper, especially in cases like this?
Yeah, in as much as the legislators are to be like a control mechanism. But you discover that most of the things that the president, which is executive hands, have been providing to support the borrowing has been justified by them. Take, for example, there was a time that we requested for loan on infrastructural grant to develop some of the infrastructure that would aid production and productivity in the country. Remember the rail line, remember the road infrastructure, and some other things that are expected for. So when you put before before the legislators reason for the use of the money, and it's justifiable. You cannot blame them to it because they're actually acting on the capacity of what they know, not looking at the consequence of some of these things. So the problem there is that when you borrow and you request for this money, how much of monitoring are we having on it to make sure that what is borrowed for is what we are using it for in such a way that we will be able to recoup our bill. And another thing that is missing when some of these things are sent even to the House of to the legislator is that the repayment terms. You are bringing a particular request for debt to secure a debt for an infrastructure. What are the plans of repaying back some of those things? It's like those businesses that we do and you carry out feasibility report. There is no crime in you borrowing, but what are the measures that you have put in place to make sure that the project you are investing in, the infrastructure you are investing in, you are able to repay back the loan without, and the interest based on it, without actually affecting some of the things. So these are few gaps that we've seen where some of these debts keep accumulating. That even most of the time we cannot even pay the capital, we just struggle to pay the interest rate.
So are you saying that
revenue is dangling?
Are you saying that the Senate, that's the National Assembly, are you saying that they are not capable? Because some of the things you mentioned, the fact that they should have checked the consequences of these borrowings, and they also should have checked if these borrowings are channeled towards the main aim for borrowing them. Are you insinuating that they are not capable of their duty of being gatekeepers?
It's not being capable, it's understanding what you are to do. So when you don't have deep knowledge of what to do, you cannot blame the person for not being capable. It is what is being put across to them, all in the name of alleviating, some of the problems that the citizens are actually facing. And because they regard themselves as a legislative that is citizen-friendly, that is why you saw the other time the Senate saying that whatever the president brings, because they have to believe that majority of the borrowing are used even for the benefit of but the area where they have the gap is that when the money is actually being borrowed, there is no monitoring mechanism. That is where the gap is. It's not borrowing that is the issue, but the borrowing mechanism, but the monitoring mechanism to make sure that some of the things that the funds are borrowed for are be able to recoup it. Look at the train facility. We borrowed those infrastructure in place. How much revenue have we gotten from it? We've had intermittently where some of these trains break down, they cut the rail, and that in turn reduce the revenue that you're supposed to get to repay back the loan that is attributable to that. So on the long run, you discover that you'll be defaulting, and more penalty will attract to some of these things that will increase the base of your liability, even to those that you are owing. So this is the gap where we are. We borrow, but we fail to monitor to make sure that reason for borrowing is actually being monitored to recoup back the funds.
Let's put a pause on it there, Mr. Olusegun Okwande. But please, we will be back to continue the conversation with you. We'll take a break now. When we come back, the conversation continues. Please stay with us.